Oh,
And
it's 4th of July and the people are out doing their guns.
Okay, we're recording.
So, yeah, our vision or our mission statement is a private sanctuary where art, spirit, and nature meet. And so the art, spirit, and nature are the most important part of that. The art, I want it to be more theater. I want it to be more dance, music performance, visual arts, photography, glassworks, pottery. Here comes fonts. The spirit, we kind of got covered. We do spiritual stuff. We're doing Inanna, very spirit-oriented. We did Isis, very spirit-oriented. We do a lot of Dionysos stuff. Even some of our art is infused with spirit, like the Bacchae. So that was a theatrical performance that was very spirit-based.
Rude cat.
Cracks me up.
My
and
cat
then
does
the
the same
nature
thing.
is obviously very inherent in the space itself. But as I was telling Sarah, is it Sarah?
Sarah Faye.
Sarah Faye.
It's all the same to
Sarah
me.
Faye. I was telling Sarah Faye that we want more like people coming out and giving us tree identification tours, or like mushroom identification tours, or flowers, or birds, or whatever their thing is that they have knowledge in, having a tour or a class or a workshop, education, right? We want all of that in this space. So that's my 30-year vision, is to not only keep doing what we're doing, but to amplify it and to get more people involved. We're turning ourselves into a nonprofit, you know that. And B, just to get more stuff happening, more education, more workshops, more like connection to nature and connection to art. Because I'm of the mind that the future will need more nature and will need more art to get us through. I don't think our solutions lie necessarily. I mean, science is important and science is a part of all this, but it's not the ultimate answer. I think the ultimate answer is connection to nature and art.
We need to heal.
Yeah.
We have generational trauma, racial trauma, situational
Yeah.
trauma. Like, and the quickest, best way, I think, is to escape to nature and do art. Like,
Exactly.
channel that.
Yeah.
Also, find people. Like, this is a healing retreat, essentially.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel that about this.
Yep.
Also, knowledge. People are so disconnected from, like, when you're looking at a screen, you're not using your textile, right? And you don't smell things. You don't understand it. Step through the screen.
Kinesthetic, yeah, like feeling, yes.
I was at lunch yesterday, and this party of people came in. There were two little girls, looked to be maybe 4 or 5, and they sat them down with their fam, and they each had a little screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought,
Yeah.
they're not listening to the adults. They're not learning any behavior.
Right. I mean, to be fair, my mom used to do that to me, but with a book. So I don't know how different it is, because I'm always like, because I'll say that, like, my friends have kids now, and they're like, you know, how did people fly without technology? And I'm like, well, what we did back in the day was we had books. Bless you. We had books and puzzles.
Or we
and
slept.
Yeah.
Or we...
It's like I was a kid that would go to a restaurant with a bunch of adults and like do this and just read the entire time.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't interact with the adults. I didn't do anything with the adults, and I would just read. But I think it's a little bit different because it's like tactile.
Your ears are still open.
Yeah.
When you're focused on a screen and there's...
Well, and also they usually have the headphones because they're watching a movie or whatever. Yeah. They're in their own, like, their own
private
world.
And I thought how sad that is.
Yeah.
I hang out with people who are addicted to technology. Like, my 3 roommates are just addicted to technology. And it's like, I'm sitting there working on, like, I've been working on research for 3 to 4 years at this point, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm making an impact by the people that I work with, the things that I do in my
Right.
free time. And they just come home and just, like,
Zone
vegetate.
out. Yeah.
I'm like, but you're not connecting with people in a way that's, like, helpful to this reality,
Right.
which is the one that actually matters.
Yeah.
And your escapism is actually probably pulling away from ways you could be happier.
Right. Yeah.
And
well, that's the weird thing. Is
Yeah.
that, I mean, this is, you know, a lot of people numb themselves with alcohol, with TV, with, you know, gaming. And, like, I don't have anything against those things. Like, I think utilized in balance, those things are fine and wonderful.
It's coping, but it's out of moderation.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm always like, I'm going to grad school in the fall, and one of the interesting things that I'm doing, which I'm either really scared about because I think it's going to be horrible, or I'm really excited about because it might be amazing,
Yeah.
is bringing AR and VR into the world, but also like integrating it into everyday life. So there's this really cool study about this guy, one of my professors that I'm really excited to work with. He's a like a psychology, but communication psychologist or something. And he did this study where people who put a VR set on and interact as a turtle, a sea turtle, are more likely to A, give money to the sea turtle conservation, and B, care about the environment around them and become more of an environmentalist.
So that's a positive.
So that's a positive thing. So that's what I'm saying. I think these technology things can be used for good if used in the right way.
But not for escapism.
Exactly. And I think using technology to get more integrated into the world and to help and to be, you know, involved in society instead of escaping from society is beneficial. But I think it can also, there can be a tipping point where people just, you know, yeah. So
What will your degree be in?
Strategic communications. So it's all about like I'm doing the XR track, which is like strategic communications with this AR VR sort of track in there, where I'm going to learn about like how to make people care more about the world around them by using technology.
Please care more
Empathy.
about the world.
Basically, like creating empathy. And Michael always makes fun of me because he's like, you always say creating empathy. Don't you just like have to have empathy like naturally? I'm like, you'd be surprised.
It's a learnable skill.
It's a learnable skill. And so many people don't necessarily, they might have it, but they don't tap into it on a daily basis.
Or
So maybe
express it.
something that like gets them involved in like, you know, seeing a village in Africa or seeing like homeless people in the streets of Portland, like being in their village, not just, you know, witnessing them like this, but actually like living the day in a life of a homeless person. Like maybe that increases empathy and allows them to be a nicer human. I don't know. We'll see. This is the experiments that
I
are
would
happening
think
right
so.
now.
So I have some thoughts I
So-
would love to share
Of
with you.
course.
Okay. I love neurology. I love the way the brain works and everything about that. I don't know how experienced y'all are with that, but
A little bit. Yeah.
okay, so one of the things, there's a book called The Brain That Changes Itself, and what it talks about is learned non-use. Because you like learned how to use your dominant hand, you learned not to use this one, for example, right? What other ways have we learned non-use? Like if someone does something for you, you might not have to learn that skill,
Right.
and therefore you never use it, and then you don't realize it's missing from your life. Like empathy. If you don't learn empathy, but they also say use it or lose it. So if you're like, because that
Yeah.
brain space is going to be taken up with whatever you're focusing on.
Exactly.
Right? And so
Yeah.
if you don't learn empathy and you're not practicing empathy, you're going to forget empathy.
Exactly.
And if you get really rich, you're getting farther away from what it was like to be poverty.
Yeah.
Your brain is actually changing itself in order to not even resonate with that because it doesn't function that way
Right.
anymore.
You're
And-
not having to think about it, so it's not being used.
and
Yeah.
so like we're disconnecting ourselves based on these social classes because we don't recognize the struggle at the very bottom, you
Right,
know.
right.
And like if you hang out with people, I like to call them nomads and not homeless because I think homeless is actually a derogatory term, simply because people without money are discriminated against.
We usually say people experiencing homelessness. So it's like a temporary thing. We work with families specifically. So we say families experiencing homelessness. So like, you know, that's like saying, I'm experiencing an injury right now. I'm not a person with an injury.
I like
I'm
that.
experiencing an injury right now. That doesn't mean that this experience is permanent, you know, but it's happening
temporary
to me at the
situation.
moment.
I like
Yeah.
nomad.
Nomad's good, yeah.
Because then you're moving where the stuff is that
Right,
you need, you
right,
know?
right.
And it's traveling, it's a different mindset
Whether
entirely.
that's someone's couch or the, you know, your vehicle or, yeah.
But like if you don't have money, you can't go pee in some places.
Right.
And then they might just go pee on the back of your building. So, I mean,
know.
I saw it happen many times when people got turned away. So I'm just like, why don't we use the toilets?
Yeah.
Like we're supposed to and
Yeah.
stop discriminating because that person chose not money. I actually found out like recently, like a week and a half ago, like my psychology around money was actually false because they say neurons that fire together wire together. So when I was a kid, my dad did some inappropriate behavior. And after the fact, he gave me gifts like money, okay? And so I saw that as hush money, but I also saw that as I'm trying to buy your love. So I'm now
Right.
wiring these things together. But actually, I saw money as unsafe.
Right.
So I actually created an aversion to money.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Even though money would theoretically buy safety, right? And so money's neutral.
Yeah.
Money's a tool.
Yeah.
And but I overlaid love. I overlaid safety.
Yeah.
So much so that like I was not able to improve upon my life. I was not able to ask for what I was worth. I was not able to like feel empowered when I got money because I just needed to give it away afterwards.
Right.
And I'm like, what is wrong with my psychology? And I actually recorded myself talking through this, like, it felt like babbling because I was like, I've wired something wrong.
Yeah.
I know I did. And I know I can unwire things and learn.
That's the thing about the plasticity of the brain.
It's beautiful.
It is.
But it took like an hour, just 1 hour. I watched this video a couple times now.
I thought that was really instructive to watch yourself say those things.
I saw, so a couple observations was my deep breathing. A couple times I would burp. I thought that was interesting. One time I felt like vomiting. So it actually was like a visceral, I had found it, but it was like, I was just talking. And then about 5 minutes in, I just start crying. And I was like, that felt like I was out of nowhere. But I was trying to identify the trauma related to my aversion to money. Because if you have an aversion, use it or lose it. If you're not going to use it, you're not going to use it. So I need to, but this is only a week and a half ago. I don't know what to do with this knowledge.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm still digesting it on the drive out here. And I was like, oh my gosh, what other ways have I created this kind of
and we all have this. I mean, like you say, like intergenerational trauma too, and you know and sometimes it's so unconscious that you don't even know it until something comes up and you're like, why am I crying right now? This is so weird. I can't rationalize this, or there's no logic to this, because I'm a very rational, logical person. So if I can't rationalize or find logic within it, it confuses the crap out of me. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Why is this
the
happening
dots are
right
not
now?
connecting. Cognitive dissonance. Two competing belief systems.
So, but our bodies have this interesting way of reacting when the conscious brain is not able to understand.
So for me,
so fascinating.
This weekend is hell.
This weekend?
The 4th of July.
And I just ignore it.
I wish I could. When the neighbors are shooting fireworks off, and I don't know where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've not been in a war.
Right.
But I just can't stand it, and it just makes me violent.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, that's something to look at. I mean, maybe it could not be in your life. It could be something in your life. Totally, or just past generations. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's that. I love all that new research about generational trauma, because it's like, I mean, my grandfather's Native American, so it's like, I know there's some trauma there. You know?
Definitely.
Big trauma there.
Mirror neurons are a thing too. So we mirror the things that we see. Okay. So I'm going to talk about my mom and my brother's little daughter, right? She's only like 3. And so my mom got attacked by 5 pit bulls. So she has a limp and has to sit down when she does yard work, right? She's got 2 acres. And this little 3-year-old sees my mom do some work, sit down because she has to, and then go back to work. But this little 3-year-old will grab some stuff, sit down, not know why, right? She's doing it because of a protective behavior that my mom needs. And she's adopted it, even though she doesn't know why she has to do it.
Right.
And then she'll go back to work.
Mirrors it.
And so we could be doing that with trauma in someone else because we witnessed it. Oh, that's how they handled it.
Right.
This might be a leg trauma, but we have emotional trauma. And maybe your family had emotional trauma. But also, the thing I do is I have a little book. I call it my trigger tracker. So when I feel a twinge of emotion that I don't understand, one, I'll write down what was happening, just whatever that situation was. And then I will write down whatever emotion comes up. And any flashes of images or memories that come to mind, I will write them down. And then I will sit with it. And just sit with it long enough to be like, okay, how could this be interconnected? Why did that flash? That doesn't make any logical sense to me. And that's when I've identified probably 3 different things that were PTSD in my life. And maybe more at this point. But like, it was just because I started being aware and looking for these things.
Huge.
Use it or lose it. Build it up, right? So you can start recognizing where PTSD might be occurring. maybe some animal was harmed that you loved with the fireworks, and so you have some kind of resentment, or like, I have no idea, but like, if you weren't military, my roommate, he was in the military, and he was around a car bombing, and so like this triggers him, and like my family, they do like Fort Vancouver fireworks, and like I had helped one year, and I was like, I can't support this, and I dropped out right before the 4th of July last year. They're like, well, we'll never ask you again. I was like, good, don't, because I don't support this anymore.
Are they having that this year? I don't think they are.
I don't know.
We just have neighbors that shoot their guns all weekend, but whatever. I'm so over it now. I mean, it doesn't bother me anymore. It did when I first moved out here, but now I'm just like, all right, they're doing that. I know what they're doing. Like, again, I can rationalize it. I'm like, I know what they're doing. They're sitting, they're target shooting. They're sitting in their backyard with their friends, and they're going, oh. And I'm like, okay, that's what they're doing. And that's their idea of fun. And I can't be mad at that, because then I have to be okay with them being mad at us having a fire and dancing around it with drums. You know what I mean? So I have to find that, like,
balance.
But are they?
What?
Are they mad when
they
complained?
Well, not in a while, because we understand each other. So we had a conversation 9 years ago where they were very upset for like 3 or 4 years.
Communication!
And we finally said, hey, we're going to keep doing this. So what can we do to make it so that you're not upset, And we only do it 3 times a year. It's not like it happens every weekend, and we're
Right.
like, and he basically said, just be okay with my friends and I shooting our guns and doing our motorbikes, and we're okay with you doing your thing as long as you give us advance notice. And I'm like, perfect.
Communication.
That works.
So I literally, like, now when I hear the guns, I can't be mad, because I'm like, okay, we made an agreement. So, but yeah, yes, communication. This is why I'm going back to school for it. It's one of the most important and amazing things to me. It's also the thing that confounds me most, and about humans especially, because I can be like, I said this thing, and they heard this other thing.
How did that happen?
Where in this ether did the miscommunication? I want to know.
I think the problem is we don't ask people's definitions of things.
Yeah.
Okay, so like,
You do have to define things.
when I traveled, I didn't understand people.
Yeah.
So like when I was in Alabama, this man was like, hair and a biscuit. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? I don't know your context or anything.
Right.
Like, please define that. Also, your accent's pretty strong. Like,
Yeah.
I just, if I ask you to
What'd you
repeat,
say?
if I ask you to repeat, I'm just trying to listen and understand, but like, we are speaking the same language, but we're not
I was
speaking
married
the
to a
same
British guy for 7 years. I'm like,
So,
what'd you say again? I have no idea what you just said.
That's when you wish for the subtitles.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I wish we did have subtitles so bad.
I had to like interpret what he said sometimes. We'd go out to dinner and he'd be like, I'd like a glass of water. And he would have to say it like 12 times. And I finally said to him, water. Water. Water.
Say water.
Yeah, humans
Water,
are an
please.
interesting bunch, so.
And to ask for feedback, I've said this.
Yes.
What did you hear?
Yes.
What's your
I've started to
interpretation?
do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
powerful.
I have started to do that. This is what I said. What did you hear? Or this is what my intention was in communicating this to you. What did you hear? This. That's not what let's meet somewhere in the middle.
I literally had to create index cards for myself in order to rewire my brain, also to choose better wording that is a little more fluid with a lot more people.
Yeah.
Index cards are an incredible tool.
Mhm. Yeah, he's being so cute.
Oh,
I love him so much.
meow meow.
I think this is why I get along with animals so well, because there's no words. Like the communication is so different, and it, to me, I wouldn't say it's easier, but it's like simpler. Where I'm like, oh, I get you, and you get me. And like, if you're doing this to me, I know you don't want to be held anymore, and so okay. And it's easier to me than words. Words are hard. And words can be so misinterpreted in so many ways.
Yeah.
Well, if people are thinking in their heads, they actually have some narrative they're already pulling from. and then you say something and they've just overlaid whatever they were thinking
all the
onto
time.
it. So if
All the
they're
time.
thinking most pessimistic, especially like self-derogatory, which is common, right?
Yeah.
They might just be ascribing all of that to whatever you just said and not hear a goddamn thing you said and have a whole different experience. And you're like, where did this even come from? You know?
My brain. It came from my mind.
My twisted mind.
My twisted mind.
There's a part in the brain called the reticular activating system, and I wish more people knew about it. And essentially, it's got a few purposes, but one of it is like it will find evidence for whatever you believe. Mm-hmm. So if you believe you're a genius, you could be a complete asshole and still think, oh, I'm a genius.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
That explains a lot about Trump.
So explains so much. Oh my God.
Yes, it's you know, denial in a lot of senses, but also I think it's the part of the brain that you're like, oh man, I remember that, and it keeps working until like 2 days later. Oh, I remember their name. And like,
Yeah.
it's like it's trying to find evidence for whatever you're searching for. It's like your Google search bar too, a little bit, and it's like, what have you been looking before? Because it's going to pull up anything. Like, and but also. Our brain drops certain words like no, don't, shouldn't, like these like describer words. So if our keywords, these key terms that we use, are negative, we are actually pulling up files, if you will, of all these negative associations with that word, right? And so say, you know, I don't want to be fat. The word that's bouncing in your head is fat. And you might actually become more fat. And like instead of, I want to be healthy. And so your brain looks for a different word, healthy, and then pulls up all the information about healthy.
Right.
You're going to get higher quality content in your experience of
Oh,
life.
I like that. I'm going to start using that. That's lovely.
Or it's like saying to a child, don't fall, and that's the last thing they hear.
Yeah.
Fall, and they fall.
Yeah. I started changing it, and I noticed improvement. Instead of saying I'm always klutzy or clumsy, you know, I say I'm majestic, I'm graceful, and I don't fall anymore. Like not as much as I used to. I used to hurt myself all the time.
Well, someone said at Sunfest, I can't remember who it was, where they said like start imagining the things you do want to be instead of all the things you don't want to be.
Yeah.
And that will help, you know, activate like those things in your brain where it's not I don't want to be this anymore and I don't want to be, and everything's negative.
The word
like,
don't is removed.
Yeah.
And then you're just that thing.
Exactly.
I want to be.
I want to be this. Yeah,
It's magical.
I love that.
It's so magical.
And it's not like, you know, frou-frou, magical, positive thinking. It's just the way
Activating-
neurology is.
it's the brain.
Chemical, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
our cells.
Because that's always my issue where I'm just like, oh God, you know, because I used to be a yoga teacher. For 12 years, I was a yoga teacher. And I was never very good at the frou-frou part, the woo-woo, as I call it. Because, you know, everyone was like, oh, just sit and meditate into being what you want. And I'm like, you actually have to do the work, too. FYI, you can't just sit in the...
There are steps that you must take if you wish to achieve XYZ.
So I was always very, like, I wouldn't say pessimistic, but, you know, sarcastic, because that's my nature about
I would say
the yoga
that's
world.
realistic.
Sure. But, you know, it got on people's nerves because I was always just like, whatever. Being in the yoga world for so long. Oh.
There is something about the imagination.
For sure.
If you visualize it, you're actually, like, if you were to do a vision board or a vision image and you just cut and pasted a bunch of images or you painted it however your art comes about, right? You have this thing in front of you. Now you could literally grab each of these things and think about, okay, well, what's the progress bar on that, like, shed I want, right? You know, what is the progress bar on this? And, like, people don't realize they're also missing learning steps to their education. Generally, what we're missing is somebody we can talk to that will tutor us, that will give us language, answer our questions, and guide us through the process. Because we don't seek tutors, we get hung up and we...
YouTube videos.
Especially... well, you gotta ask questions because, like, the translation doesn't quite connect, right? And I noticed that, like, I gave myself a grading system because of the whole thing. There's 7 levels, right? You know, usually if I get to level 3, it just means I don't have a tutor, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm stuck at level 3 until I get a tutor. I cannot achieve max level 7. Yeah. If I don't do that because, like, there's missing things. And I actually have to help on projects that aren't mine.
Right.
It's someone else's responsibility, but I can assist with. But I get to see the process. I get to have my hands. It's not overwhelming, you know, and they call it the intern phase or whatever, you know, like And if you're not getting paid for something, people tend to be nicer and give you more information. You know,
True
they're
enough.
like, oh, well, thank you for helping. Let me give you as much knowledge as I want or as
Right.
I can, you know.
Volunteer, yeah.
Is there a difference in your mind between a tutor and a life coach?
Okay, so I feel like life coaches have you bring yourself to a point and they challenge you and like will like push you to make sure that it's from yourself to do that. I think a tutor is someone who understands something that you don't
A
understand.
skill set.
A skill set, like, so you can level up your skill trees, if you will, by having this person come in and teach you something.
Right.
A woodshop teacher is not going to essentially, they could teach you life lessons and they could encourage you to do it on your
Yeah,
own.
it's specific. It's skill specific.
Yeah,
Right?
like, do you know the tools, the tech, and the terms?
Right.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
do you know how to use a hammer? Do you know what a router is? You know, the language and like how the procedures of using these things. And people don't get the time to absorb that kind of stuff, especially if they're just looking at their screen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if go ahead.
There was a funny study that talked about how many people can look at something, watch a video of something over and over and over again, and they attest, like, oh yeah, I'd be really good at that. I'd be really good at that. But then ask them to do it, and it's like, you actually have to do the thing to become good at it. Dance is a great example of this. Someone can, like, watch, dance steps over and over again and be like, yeah, I'd be really good at that. But then they try to do it. It's like, you've got to get it in your body. It's kinesthetic, And the same, like you were saying, you got to use your hands. You got to use, your
People
your
don't know the
tools.
preparation phase sometimes either. They just skip it. They see the mountain in the distance and like, I can get there, but then they run into a tree in front of them because they're not looking at what they have to.
Ponce.
Dude, stop smacking me in the face with your tail. Do you want to
You are the worst.
It's okay. I love cats. I love all animals. While I was traveling, I didn't have my own pet,
The
so I just
best.
interacted with as many animals as I could.
Yeah.
Wild or not, I was like, hey, hi chipmunk, how you doing?
Yes. I love animals. They're so good.
Do a lot in this area too. So.
I feel really bad about the cycle of life though, because man, this cat just kills so many animals. Rodents and birds, and it's very sad.
Can you put a bell on him?
We did. He loses it. We've tried so many things. We tried the big, like, fancy Shakespeare collar. It's called Bird Be Safe. And he still killed many birds while he had that collar on. We put a bell on him. He keeps losing them. It's just pointless at this point. If we try to keep him inside, it would not work because we've opened Pandora's box, essentially. So it is what it is at this point. The only good thing, this is not good because I love him and I want him to live forever, is that because he's an outdoor cat, he probably won't live as long as he would have if he was an indoor cat. So in a way, he won't kill as many things.
Does he kill rodents?
Oh yeah, he actually does
See?
his job
That's
really
great.
well. He
That's
kills
great.
rats and mice. And
there's
other
no end of
things. Oh my God, there's so many. It's insane.
Yeah.
How many of those there are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Check your cars before you leave because he might, especially if you let your windows roll down, he might be
I
inside.
left mine up.
Okay, good.
Mine too.
Okay, good. What time is it? I have to shower before I go into
2:22.
town. Oh, okay, good.
So is there more to do?
I don't think so.
I think that was the goal.
All right. Well, I got stuff to do at home.
Yeah.
I have a call at 5, so I was like, well, as long as I'm out of here by 4,
Yeah.
it's like an hour drive back.
We have to leave at 4,
you
so we're
live in
going into
Vancouver?
town to visit friends.
I'm in Tigard,
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
so not so far.
Yeah.
If you need me, call me.
Well, if you ever want to come see a show at Lakewood, I'll send you guys the info. Lake
Lakewood.
Oswego.
Oh, okay.
I think what should happen is like a group chat where people can just like, hey,
Come to my thing.
come to my thing, or help me fix this thing, or help me build this thing,
I
like
love
that
it.
kind of chat.
We need that.
Or Facebook group or something.
I agree. And I think it's like, I think
Facebook
of
event.
all my friends who, I always tell them, I'm like, keep inviting me to things. I will come every now and then. I won't always be able to. But even if I say no 12 times, keep asking me. Because I'm not saying no because I don't want to. It's just like...
Life is full.
Exactly. And I think this is really important as we get older because we often think of like the word no as this, oh, well, I'm going to stop asking them because, they're too busy,
no.
or they'll say no,
or rejection
they can't
sensitivity is
do
a thing.
it.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's like, no, I really, so I will like tell everybody, all of my friends, I'll be like, just keep asking me. I will, there are times when I'm like, oh, thank you so much for asking me that, because I was really wanting to do something like that, right? I've been meaning to come to your show, or I've been meaning to do the thing, or whatever it is.
So ADHD, out of sight, out of mind is the thing.
That's
okay?
the thing too.
You could stay in an apartment for years and still kind of forget where the plates are, okay? Out of sight, out of mind if you're not in the kitchen all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And so...
where did I put that?
Yeah.
So,
oh, I had that.
If
right.
you're not talking to friends for a while, out of sight, out of mind. And, like, maybe you're not even processing emotions. Out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Just process your emotions for 90 seconds. That's all you have to sit through. Yeah. And it will go through. And if you're, like, not grieving certain things, like 90 fucking seconds, man, at a time,
90 seconds. That's good to know.
Yeah. Well, if you have ADHD, you actually have trained yourself to distract yourself before 90 seconds has come.
Right.
So you don't actually process a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
I got ADHD, if you can tell.
You don't say.
But since I love neurology and I love learning about trauma and trauma healing, I just am obsessed with understanding like how to optimize this brain type. It's just a brain type.
Yeah.
Lean into it, man. It's a superpower.
Yeah.
Hyper focus is an incredible tool.
Have you listened to Gabor Mate?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
How do you spell that?
Gabor, Gabor.
Okay.
And his last name is Mate, Mate, with an accent. He's from Hungary, and he's a physician, retired now, but he lectures, and he worked a lot in Vancouver with the addicted population there, and really has a great understanding of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
His books are incredible, and his talks. I love his
far
honesty.
too obsessed with trauma. Like, I
think you would like him.
To understand, yeah.
I think you would
it's
like him.
super important to understand. I've learned a lot because working where I work, our executive director just loves, like, she's fascinated by neuroscience and just the neuroscience of trauma specifically because in working with populations of people who have immense amounts of trauma, they don't hear everything. Like you say, like, you can say, hi, please come to your appointment at 3, and they hear, like, every other word.
Because they're in their head.
So you have to either say it, or find other ways to communicate it. So, like, our shelter staff and our housing staff have gone to a million different trainings, and I go to them as well because I just find them fascinating, even though I'm just the admin coordinator. But it's like, saying it, writing it down, saying it again, putting it in a thing, having them write it down, having them repeat it back to you. What time is? And did you hear what I said? What time is your appointment? Do you need me to remind you? Like, do you text you 5 minutes before? Like, just making sure, and not like in a condescending way, but just in a how can I support you in making it to this thing that will help you then.
WikiHow!
Yeah!
WikiHow, have them learn the steps because in their learning they might have overlooked certain steps.
Mm-hmm.
And the standard operating procedure, if they can learn that, they will wire a routine. And if they wire a routine, it becomes habit.
Exactly.
And it takes me, personally, 21 to 41 days to have a new habit.
Yeah.
Like, if I could commit 6 weeks to anything I want, I'm solid.
Yeah.
But, like, I only try to change, like, 1 to 2 things a month, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to overload myself.
And it's really important for us to understand this because, instead of, like, and getting mad, because, I mean, for so long, caseworkers or people who are working with populations of people will be like, well, God, they didn't show up for our appointment.
Again.
Or they didn't do this, or they didn't do that, and I'm trying to help them, and they're just not doing the thing, and they're not playing their part. And it's like, if you understand that telling them one time 3 weeks ago to show up for their appointment and getting mad at them when they don't is not helpful.
Teach them to set alarms.
Yeah, it's like, well, and they're, our shelter staff are so amazing. They do so many things like that. Like, They, will do text messages, they'll do handwritten notes, they'll do, when they see them, they'll be like, what's going on tomorrow? What's on your schedule? Do you have your calendar with you? Can we go over it together? Like so many different ways to help people.
Do you work?
It's called Portland Homeless Family Solutions. It's on Southeast Foster and Woodstock.
Uh-huh.
But our main thing is...
That's a haul, baby.
Yeah. I only go 3 days a week.
That's
I
good.
work at home 2 days a week.
Yeah.
I'm admin, so
Yeah.
I could do that. But yeah, it's been really fascinating to learn this because I'm always just like, oh yeah, we put the responsibility on these people that have been homeless with their children,
God, can you
experiencing
imagine?
trauma, like getting them to school while living out of their
It
vehicle.
compounds. It doesn't go away. It
I
doesn't get
know.
easier.
And
It's just
we're
more
just like,
trauma.
oh, you people, and I'm just like, you hear the language that we used to use like 10 years ago of working with homeless people and like blaming them for their situation, and now it's just shifted so much, and it's really great to see the shift and put the responsibility on the people who are working with them and say,
Yeah.
how can we support you? Because we want you to get back into housing, and we want you
What are your
to
thoughts about basic
find these
income?
things. Oh, I love it. I think it's fantastic. Neil and I talk about it all the time. He's just like,
Other countries
there has
do
to-
that,
I
don't
know. Well, other countries also give free health care and free education and
Yeah.
so many other things. Yeah, this country is so backward in so many ways.
So behind. So
and
behind.
getting worse as we
Money
speak.
gives you extra mental bandwidth. It also
So speaking of basic income, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, but we are doing a program right now. It's a pilot program called the Cash Transfer Program, where we're giving, I think it's 10 families who, have a certain criteria, and we're giving them $600 a month per family.
is it conditional?
It's not. They're and they have contacted us and just been like, you have no idea how much this helps us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to choose between like diapers and food.
It's
Or
a
rent.
it's a breath of
or
fresh air.
Utilities.
It's a gift
or-
of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, time. And like this one woman was like, I used to work 3 jobs. I never saw my kids. I felt so guilty. And I still was struggling. And just having this like, I could let go of one of my really crappy minimum wage jobs and like spend time with my son, helping him with his homework, and you're just like, and we're so just like, oh, we don't want to give people free money. But it's like, but if you do, society becomes better.
Hello.
Yeah.
Because these people are like
It's a floor to
able
stand
to
on.
spend time with their children, or spend time with their spouse, or spend time with their friends, or like
Or
create.
even just spend time
create
alone to gather your
alone in a
thoughts.
bath. I mean, God forbid,
Yeah.
Instead, we're like, no, they have to work 3 jobs and be like have a horrible life just so that they can afford their crappy apartment.
Did you
It
ever
is
read
not free
Nickel
to
and
exist.
Dimed?
It's so hard. What?
Did you ever read Nickel and Dimed?
Oh yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
Barbara,
Ehrlich.
Ehrlich, yeah.
Yeah.
I read that in the 90s, and ever since I've just been like, yep.
Yeah.
I have Audible. I'm going to download that book.
It's a good one.
I have
It's
3
old,
credits.
but it's old, but it's still relevant. In fact, even more relevant.
Oh, I think so.
I mean,
the poverty now is
it's
way
worse.
worse than it used to be.
It's so much worse. And yet, there are more billionaires. It doesn't make any sense to me.
That pisses me
I was listening to Throughline the other day, and they were talking about the game Monopoly. You should listen to Throughline; it's really great. But they were talking about how that game came about, and it just went through the history of and this guy Henry George or something like this wrote this book about how no one should be starving or in rags when someone can make $1 million. This was in 1865, so $1 million was like a big deal back then. And he's like, those two things should not exist in the same
Should not
world.
coexist.
And I'm not saying everyone should have equal stuff. I'm not saying everyone should live in like a little box so that everyone can
We're
live in a
not
little
equal
box.
in our
You know.
abilities
Equity.
No,
or
yeah,
our
exactly.
or our intellect or anything, but
But no
we
one should
all
be
deserve-
starving on the street when they're a
Right.
billionaire. It's
We
just, those two things need to
all
come a
deserve
little bit closer together.
Use it or lose it. They didn't have to exist in the world that wasn't just instant
Yeah.
gratification.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. What's your tattoo going to be?
Okay, yeah. So it's actually a fairy blowing bubbles with tigers in it
Oh,
on top
fun.
of a mushroom.
Oh my god.
It hurt a lot, so I stopped. Also, the person who was tattooing me was my not so healthy ex. So so now I
you're
have
like, new
to
thing.
raise some money to finish it.
I'm like, do I get him to drive me up? No, I'll walk. I know.
But yeah, so I think tattoos can have a lot of meaning and power. Actually.
Oh, hell yeah.
So this one right here, I got right after a breakup, and I chose savor this moment, and I chose every time I saw it, I would think of 5 things I could savor in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And so I was really depressed. It was actually my divorce I was going through.
I can't see mine.
And so I ended up just like thinking of 5 things, and if I felt sad again, I would have to choose 5 new things, right? And so throughout the day, I might have 45 different things I was savoring, okay, because I was so depressed. And then one day, out of the blue, I wasn't looking at it or anything. I was like, oh, I'm sad, but it's okay, this and that, it's good. And I noticed, oh my gosh, I rewired my brain, like from a tattoo, and I was like, whoa! And so like now I have this thing, I call it phase tattoo, PHASE tattoo. So like, it's a tattoo phase, but like essentially you can rewire your brain by symbolism.
You can.
And I'm like, whoa.
You can.
And
This
so
is
then,
my divorce tattoo.
Oh my God, that's so hilarious.
To me, it means strength and freedom.
Nice.
And if you don't like what you got, run like hell.
Right. I like that a lot. Well, I don't see mine, but I just basically got Finnan on my back.
Oh, so beautiful.
Oh.
How majestic.
Oh, who did that?
This guy Dan at Atlas Tattoo in North Portland.
Oh.
He like spends half of his time in San Francisco and half of his time in Portland. But
Thank you for
Neil got
sharing.
his
Yes, I
arms
agree.
done by him,
Aw.
and I loved them. And when I got to with Neil, I was like, "Who did your tattoos?" And he told me, and I was like, "I want." And then when we came here, I was like, "I want this place on my back."
That is the most beautiful thing. This is
I
a
just-
magical place.
I just thought, like, if I can't be here all the time, because this is before I lived here, I want it with me anyway, and so I want it on my back.
There was
But
a
I never
festival.
see it.
There's a festival. There's some little area. I just like kind of dug out and I like made a little fairy nest or whatever.
yeah.
And that
Love
was like,
that.
well, because when I was traveling, I didn't actually have a home. And I wanted
yeah.
Finnan to feel like just one of my nests,
Yeah.
if you will, where if I needed to land somewhere, I could come here safely.
Little nest.
And
Go
so
there in your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
and it overgrew, and that's okay. Like I just know
That's
that
life,
memory
yeah.
and
Yeah.
like just little charms that I had like put around there and like a little fairy door.
Yeah, that's nice. I like your earrings too.
Oh, thank you.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
You're a gift, and I just love wearing them. I saw
Oh,
some
it
of
was
the.
nice talking to you both.
Yeah.
Talking with you, I should get
I'm
out.
gonna get down too, but it was really nice. Come back anytime. Help us out.